After the conclusion of RPM, there was a brief lull in the Power Rangers franchise, and its future was uncertain. While it was unclear when or how a new series could be produced, the would-be hiatus was filled with reruns of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Not just any reruns, however. Dubbed the Re-Version of Mighty Morphin, these particular reruns contained new edits in an attempt to give the show a comic book style. This Re-Version was not particularly well received and lasted only 32 episodes. Having seen it myself recently, I can say the admonishment is justified. The edits are obtrusive, obnoxious, and ultimately make scenes less clear than they were originally, by needlessly recontextualizing existing elements. Some scenes are now shown completely out of order, the fight choreography is often obscured by bombastic lettering, and the edits consistently fail to add anything to the original work. At the very least, Re-Version was an excuse to re-experience the first season of Power Rangers, and oh boy is it wild. It's charming, utterly unique, and so poorly written. Don't get me wrong, there's great chemistry between the cast, the campy humor is perfectly suited to the absurd premise, and the show is surprisingly good at building and sustaining tension. No matter what sort of goofy scheme the Rangers find themselves trapped in, the urgency and drama are cranked all the way to max. This is also one of Mighty Morphin's biggest problems though, like, sometimes, rarely, the high-stake theatrics teach us something about the characters or lead to genuine development, but most of the time you're bombarded with back-to-back wacky nonsense, and very little of it alters the status quo or meaningfully informs the audience about the setting. That only makes sense given this show wasn't really planned with a story arc in mind, unlike later seasons, but it ultimately feels very cheap and unrewarding. The famous 5-parter Green with Evil is the worst example of this. From a marketing perspective, it's genius. It's a feature-length explosive sequence of non-stop mayhem. It stacks so many new plot elements atop one another so rapidly to instill ceaseless excitement in the audience. But when you examine each of those plot elements on their own merits, it completely falls apart. Green with Evil tries to kill Zordon twice, tries to kill Alpha twice, pretends the Zords get destroyed, introduces a new Ranger, introduces the Dark Dimension, introduces the Sword of Darkness, introduces the Dragon Zord, but it's all done without foreshadowing build-up or frankly any payoff. We never hear about most of these concepts prior to Green with Evil, and only 3 of them really matter, those being the Green Ranger, the Dragon Zord, and the Sword of Darkness. Everything else is a pointless, agonizing diversion from the core conflict, and during the entire affair you barely learn a thing about the new Green Ranger as a person. There's no time for character development when you're jumping from insane crisis to insane crisis, without explanation. The music is overbearing, the story is utterly lacking in substance, and there's no room to breathe. So I guess, yeah, the Re-Version is as surreal as it is awful. It's pointless, and it should only be viewed as a novelty. And as for Mighty Morphin itself, or at least early Season 1, man, I'm glad it got better later. The cheesy humor is fantastic, the characters are memorable, and I adore Rita's portrayal, but that alone can't mask how shallow it all is.